Hello, my name is Erwin Tang. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am the owner of Austin, Texas Counseling. It's a one-person operation. I help people with various types of behavioral addictions, including addiction to social media. And I'm not going to go into the other types of addictions because that's not what you're asking about. This video is being made in response to a student asking me questions regarding the social media addiction epidemic. Actually, I think she called it the social media epidemic. Um, and that's okay. My problem is that it is a social media addiction epidemic. And she asks, how do I define epidemic? Well, I uh, am not that interested in the fact that it is an epidemic. I'm interested in helping the individual client to uh, to terminate their addiction to social media, whether it be to YouTube or Twitter or X or Facebook or IG, Instagram, Snapchat, um, and there are some other ones that have um, more disturbing or adult material on them that I won't mention here. Um, but an epidemic, how do I define it? Well, it's interesting. The social media epidemic is an epidemic in the sense that a lot of people, you know, a vast the vast majority of, for instance, teenagers are on social media now, and the vast majority of youth, teens through 20s and early 30s, spend a substantial time, sometimes hours, sometimes several hours a day on social media. Um, so I would call that the uh, uh, an epidemic. The Another aspect that makes it an epidemic, I think it makes it similar to a disease epidemic, is that it is passed from one person to another. It is passed socially, and it doesn't have to be, in fact, it's typically not passed on in person. It's passed on through the computer from one person to another person via the internet, via communicating through social media. Um, and yeah, someone will send a message, and you can only read the message by going to your IG or your Facebook. Someone will post pictures, someone will post video, and the only way you're going to be able to see it is on YouTube or on Twitter or on IG or something like that. And then, yeah, so then you've got the virus, you've got the viral spreading of the use of this new form of communication, contact, um, and socialization. All right, let's see what the next question is. How are you an expert in social media? Well, I am not an expert on social media. I'm an expert on terminating behavioral addictions. And typically, most of the internet related addictions are very similar. And so they have a similar way of coping and terminating those addictions. And that involves everything from um, real-time self-awareness of one's actions, thoughts, and behaviors or emotions, as well as things like developing better coping mechanisms for when you're feeling down, when you're feeling nervous, when you're feeling bored. What can you do besides the thing that you are addicted to? It can involve developing mantras and certain self-talk that you can bring up when you realize that you are thinking or planning or fantasizing or recollecting about your last experience with the object of addiction. Um, Lots of different methods and micro habits can be developed with each individual quote unquote addict. Um, and that's how I do that. I work individually. I try to understand what the person's addiction cycle looks like, and I help them develop different methods to attack every single point on that addiction cycle. Um, yeah, the cycle being typically, for instance, there's some sort of trigger. Perhaps something bad happens, in something annoying happens in the person's life, and that makes them feel bad. They want to feel better. They have a thought like, oh, maybe a fantasy. Oh, well, I could go online and do X, Y, and Z and take my mind, and it'll take my mind off of things. Uh, and um, and then they go and do that, and then they feel bad about it. This is not, they might feel good about it. They might feel excited. Uh, and then the cycle starts again later, or um, immediately, perhaps. Uh, let's see. What is the next question? What contributes to this issue becoming an epidemic? Well, let me get back on the video here. So, what contributes to this? Well, the main issue is that of the brain chemical known as dopamine. Um, Dopamine is the chemical that is released when one is excited to do something, nervous, anticipating, um, motivated to do something. It might be the chemical might be released also when one actually does the act, which, which might mean like logging into the social media, opening the app to the social media, reading something on social media, seeing a picture, seeing what's going on. Dopamine might even be released when you have a bad experience on social media. Someone says something snide or sarcastic to you that you don't like. That you might be motivated. The dopamine might be jacked up in your brain, and you might be motivated to respond to that, or go on some tirade, or to act out on social media, or to seek out maybe other forms of solace and camaraderie on social media, and or just seek out just more material that might make you feel bad or better. Who knows? So the key issue in the spreading of the social media epidemic has to do with how social media activates the dopamine chemical in our brains. The dopamine chemical motivates to us to seek out the social media. The social media might um, jack up our levels of dopamine, but a lot of times spending a long time on social media actually gets dull. Um, and at that point, it might be just force of habit. You're still seeking that little thrill um, of finding something new and interesting and provocative, emotionally evocative on social media, but you can't find it, so you just keep quote unquote doom scrolling, looking for that thing. Um, all right, let me get to the next question here. What warning signs should people be aware of regarding this epidemic? Well, um, what warning signs? Well, for instance, if you have difficulty stopping your social media excursion for the day, you can't go to sleep because you have to keep checking or looking at social media. You can't do your schoolwork because you need to check. You constantly being interrupted by social media. You're interrupting class, your class time. You're not focusing on class. You can't listen to your parents because you're distracted by social media. Um, what warning signs? If if you were deeply emotionally affected um, in a negative way on a regular basis, that might be a sign that social media is not perhaps the coping mechanism or the escape that you're looking for, if that is the purpose of your use of social media. If your use of social media is just to communicate with other people, you might want to look at um, whether you are whether how often you are communicating with them in actual real life, in person, face to face, in the same room, eye to eye. Um, you're missing out on perhaps 95% of the actual human connection, the human experience of uh, of communicating with another person if you're not in the same room with that person, or at least doing a video chat or a phone call. Um, if you're just exchanging messages or photographs, um, yes, that can certainly be gratifying. But there are other psychological, biochemical, and social sort of experiences and responses that happen when you are in the same room with that person, having a common experience. Yeah, so those are some perhaps some warning signs. Um, how can people already affected by the epidemic get help before it worsens? Well, how do you get help? Well, probably one of the best ways of getting help is to seek out a licensed professional counselor that specializes in helping people terminate or at least mitigate their addiction to social media. And of course, you can also help yourself um, watching YouTube videos or reading a book about how to terminate your own addiction. And you might like to experiment with, uh, for instance, better phone hygiene. Practice um, being separated from your phone for hours or a day at a time. Putting your phone in the refrigerator or something like that so that it is very much far away from you. Practice avoiding social media um, for a weekend or something like that. Um, but sometimes it often helps to have a coach or a counselor guiding you through this process and trying to help you gain insight into your own behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. So that might be the best way. I would certainly avoid uh, seeking out psychotropic medication for a social media addiction. Psychotropic medications like antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety medications have can have a lot of negative side effects, and they can also produce um, dependency, and the dependency could take months or years to uh, to wean oneself off of. Um, yes, so those are the answers to your questions. I hope that this has been useful, and this video is going to be made public so that other people can benefit from this information. All right, well, thank you very much.